Let me introduce myself. I am Vijay Kapoor, currently working as President and Dean at Chandyok Adaptive Learning Solutions. I am sure that many of you might have met me when I was working with the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. Being as Director of Studies, I have a long experience in understanding the problems which are faced by the students pursuing chartered accountancy course. I can sincerely appreciate that they have to undergo a lot of hard work to prepare for any subject. On the top of it, even working for quite long months, they have to be prepared for amendments in that particular paper. And that is what is called as the dynamics of the chartered accountancy course. Now a question arises that what makes the difference? I'm sure that all students pursuing their final course do a lot of hard work. They put in a lot of preparation. I'm sure that if they try to assess their own preparation before the examination, keep themselves up to date, and try to write the one or two papers on their own and make their presentations as perfect as possible, I'm sure that they will succeed in the examinations. Friends, in fact, at the Chandyok learning classes, we are trying to work out on various ways and means by which we can empower the students pursuing the chartered accountancy course. In that series of empowerment, we have organized webinars from our faculty so that our students at large can get benefited and make their preparations more up to date. As a series of these webinars, we are going to have eminent speakers who shall discuss with you at length not only about the contents of the course, but most importantly, how a particular question paper has to be attempted. First in this series, we have in fact requested a chartered accountant, Mr. D.S. Rawat, who is an eminent author and has written various subjects on accounting and auditing standards, who shall be discussing at detail how exactly the question paper appears and in what manner you need to solve it. Then, of course, we have also requested Professor R.D. Maheshwari, who is an eminent speaker in the subject of law. He proposes to discover the entire subject of corporate and allied laws comprehensively in about 2 hours' time and share with you some of the finer tips how that particular subject has to be attempted. In that series, the third speaker which we have is Mr. S.P. Rao, who is going to share his experience in the subject of indirect taxes. I am sure that with their long experience, they are going to share with you at length how the particular subject has to be studied, in what manner it can be updated, and how it has to be attempted in the examination. We are confident at Chandyok Adaptive Learning Solutions that by going through these lectures, it will help you not only in preparing for your last minute revision, but also guide you and make your answers as perfect as possible so that you can succeed in the November 2015 examinations. We at Chandyok Adaptive Learning wish you all the best for your November 2015 examinations. Thank you.
Very good morning, all of you. I'm S.P. Rao, and I'm very happy that I'm going to address you. Particularly, this webinar is meant for the students of CA final, particularly indirect taxes for November 2015 attempt. Friends, it's my duty to address you and give you some tips. Today, through this webinar, what I'm going to discuss, what I'm going to share with you is point number 1, your examination and the nature and scope of the examination. Maybe most of you are attempting this paper, this group for the first time, group 2. So number 2, what are the things, critical areas in indirect taxes where you have to be more careful about? And thirdly, the time management. incident, that is of course incidental. And fourth, if you have any queries, if you have any questions, it's my duty to clarify, duty to solve them. For that, if it is possible, and you can send the questions, if it is possible, I do on the spot. If time constraint is there, I can send you even afterwards. I can give you afterwards also. So questions query should be answered. Query should be cleared. That is one of the main objectives of this webinar. So your CA final November attempt, particularly November 2015, right? This is November 2015 attempt. And what is in store for you? I don't know, you don't know. But we know one thing. There is a syllabus and we have to do it. And in the syllabus, you see, if you take indirect taxes as a whole, we have three major parts. One is central excise, second one is service tax, and third one is customs and foreign trade policy. And particularly the foreign trade policy, 2015-2020, you don't need to do much. But at the most, maybe you go through the highlights of the foreign trade policy 2015 and 2020. So then foreign trade policy highlights, just for idea's sake, and the rest is the same thing. Maybe many of you, or at least some of you, must be feeling strange, somewhat maybe feeling a little bit, you can say, hesitant about dealing with foreign trade policy. In fact, foreign trade policy is not a very big thing. I will come to that also. I will spend a little more time on foreign trade policy, whatever be the time that is available with me. And first of all, let me tell you, passing the examination is one aspect, and attempting the paper with confidence is another aspect. Sometimes you may have to choose in between. Sometimes you may have outright approach. Say for example, there is a definite syllabus. From this point to this point you have to do, and we are expected to be thorough because we are a finalist. The institution, the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, expects you that you are thorough with that. By the time you get qualified, you are thorough with the knowledge. And it's not that you will become an expert by reading everything, each and everything thoroughly. So expertise is a long drawn process. Once you get qualified, once you are into actual work field, maybe in practice or maybe working with an organization or with a company, then gradually you develop what you can say expertise, maybe in a particular area only or in general. If you are in a practice, you have an opportunity to enlarge your abilities in different areas of your life, your choice. But at the same time, if you work with a company, based on the nature of the work that you are interested to do in the company, you will be developing the expertise. But here, at a student level, it is not expertise level, it is a thorough knowledge and thorough understanding of the legalities or legal aspects of the tax law. GST is coming anyway. Then there is a phase of transformation. So you have to immediately jump into GST all of a sudden. So leave away excise, leave away customs, leave away service tax, sales tax, everything. But the only thing is customs is there, still there, but with a modified form, because as per GST, the provisions under customs, they have to adapt, they have to modify. And let us confine mainly our discussion to your examination. Examination focus is examination. So first I will give you some tips about passing, which is really not advisable at a professional level, which is risky also. So with a pinch of risk, you take it. Number one, central excise is a very big and vast area, but it covers hardly 25 marks. Okay, but at the same time, service tax is not a vast area, at least right now, by now, because the new scheme has emerged. New scheme has come from 2011 and 2012 onwards. So in 2011, they made service tax as tax on accrual basis through POTR, and in 2012 they changed the structure itself, stating that every activity is taxable except those in the negative list and subject to mega exemption under notification number 25 by 2012 and also 26 by 2012 partial exemption, that is called abatement. So the structural changes have come up very recently. So just hardly 3 years, 4 years. 4 years is nothing for a subject like this. So it takes years. After 10 years, the cases start popping up. So only 3 years, 4 years means not much case study. Brewing up, cases are there, being filed in the courts, and gradually they get decided and they come out as a rule of law, as a rule. It takes time. So by then everything will be gone, the service tax will be gone, and GST will be taking place, replacing it. Then in the service tax portion should be a little easy and convenient to you, but 50%, almost 50% weightage is for service tax. So the more and more emphasis should be on service tax. Okay, but at the same time, sufficient or adequate knowledge of excise is necessary to cope with service tax. So if you have good knowledge or adequate knowledge in excise, that is going to transform into good knowledge in service tax, because there is some sort of linkage. Even framework, even they framed service tax on the lines of excise. For example, in excise also few activities, few manufacturing activities were taxable, few goods were taxable, and finally in 1975 they made an entry number 68 through the tariff, that is tariff entry, and they made all goods excisable, residual entry. So just like that, in service tax also in 2012 they made every activity taxable service except those few in the negative list. Scheme, payment, etc., structure, procedural aspects, they have framed on the lines of excise. If you see registration process, records, maintaining, etc., payment of tax, there is a lot of similarity between excise and service tax. And excise is full of concepts because it's a very old act, and so many things came up. A lot of case study developed, and a lot of concepts are there. Because of that, heavy weighted excise has become too big, too voluminous, and now you have to study excise simply for 20-25 marks. If you read a particular topic for 20 marks, topic like excise for 20-25 marks, of course choice is there, a little choice is there, so it looks somewhat burdensome, onerous, but at the same time you have to be there, you have to read excise thoroughly, because that excise knowledge you can carry on, you can use it indirectly in service tax and a little bit for customs also. And particularly, I tell you, I caution you rather, you should be very careful about Senvat credit scheme, and you have to be invariably thorough with all the provisions of Senvat credit rules. So particularly, you please take care of the recent developments, recent changes. See Rule 4, particularly Rule 4 underwent some amendments. and they are very much relevant for your examination. And recently, there is a lot of tinkering on Rule 9 of Input Service Distributor. Rule 7, say Rule 7 dealing with Input Service Distributor, and this department, the CBSE has issued a circular also with an example. You have to go through that example, illustration, and such questions may come in the examination. And the knowledge of CINVAT credit scheme is also going to help you in your service tax. And the next, valuation. So as far as valuation is concerned, not many changes, hardly any changes are there, except the fact that you should note that there is some proviso, some addition to Rule 6 of Valuation Rules 2000, in which they have nullified the effect of Fiat India Limited case. Now, somebody is selling below cost any product of any industry, selling below cost, not as a distress sale or stock clearance sale. In the ordinary course of business, he is selling below cost. And of course, even if it is not sole consideration, that is arguable. You are selling below cost, and you are not getting anything more than the price, means the customer is not paying anything more than that. Suppose your cost of production is 100, you are selling at 93 rupees, and there is no flow of consideration, there is no other flow or further flow of consideration from buyer to the SSA, that is manufacturer. So you take that 92 or 93 rupees as a transaction value. Means department has to accept it as transaction value, not as the scheme specified under Fiat India Limited case. In Fiat India Limited case, Supreme Court fortunately or unfortunately said that it should be cost plus profit. So it was not there because the government made an amendment. You please make sure that you take care of it. And of course, not now. Earlier it happened. Last year it happened. But its impact will be still there. And in valuation in central excise, but in particular, you should be ready to solve a practical question. There is a high probability for practical questions under valuation in excise. If it is not there, if you miss the bus, then elsewhere you should look to, say for example, CINVAT credit scheme, and also what you can say, small scale industry scheme, CINVAT credit scheme or small scale industrial scheme. These three are highly potential for practical questions. So you are expected to be thorough with central excise law, no matter for how many marks you are getting. Okay, and apart from excise, so when I talk about excise as a whole is conceptual, and it should not pose any difficulty for you to understand. And case study, with the help of case study, you'll get hope. Okay, and then your paper is 100 marks paper is for say question number 1, which is compulsory. In compulsory question, what you get is practical questions. Sometimes exceptionally you may have a case study also attached to that. They have a choice, examiner has a choice, because paper setter, even a legal problem, a case study is also part of problems. It's like a numerical problem. The only thing is it's in a language decided by a particular court. So in that, one practical question will be from central excise, one from service tax, one from customs, and one maybe from excise or maybe from service tax, mostly. That is a possibility. And a small question sort you may expect from foreign trade policy also. Small thing, you don't need to be worried about foreign trade policy. So because you will get compulsory question in the form of practical questions, practical problems, you have no option but to prepare for the practical question. And I tell you, you don't find it difficult also. Maybe you like to do more practical questions at this level. Then, what about service tax? And before I go for service tax, let me talk about customs and foreign trade policy because they are interlinked. Of course, even excise is interlinked, but customs is more interlinked. These three indirect taxes, excise, customs, and service tax, directly or indirectly connected with foreign trade policy. What is foreign trade policy practically? It deals with international trade. So you are importing something, you are exporting something. So government has a policy. It's a 5-year plan. It's a 5-year policy. Every 5 years, just like 5-year plan, they have 5-year plan for foreign trade policy, and government wants to move ahead with a decisive plan. So it devised a plan, and the job has been entrusted to Ministry of Commerce and Industry because Finance Ministry can't do all these things. It is concerned only with the finance, not with development and all. So Ministry of Commerce and Industry has to take care of the growth in foreign trade, in exports, and also it should be in a position to facilitate imports also because imports are also necessary. It is not stopping imports, it is not reducing imports that is necessary for the growth of the economy. It is facilitating imports that is necessary for the growth of the economy. That is the reason why earlier the policy was EXIM policy, export import policy. Simply it was a narrow outlook, export import policy. So now it is not export import policy, foreign trade policy means it encompasses, it covers other areas also, not only with regard to import and with regard to export, but also other things. So in foreign trade policy, every 5 years they bring out a policy. The government will spell out its policy and it makes decisions based on that. And it provides structure and mechanism accordingly. And the latest foreign trade policy is 2015 and 2020. By August last, the last one expired, 2009, 2014. But in between there were elections, and after elections, the new government came into picture. And in 2015, finally they rolled out. They released the foreign trade policy 2015-2020. The highlights, it's a very interesting, says the highlight, a very interesting highlight here is simplification of these schemes, reward schemes. They have simplified the reward schemes. Particularly, there are a plethora of schemes with so many names and all. Now, simply under one roof, they say for goods one and for services another one. For example, merchandise exports from India scheme, MEIS, merchandise exports from India scheme. Very simple. So it covers everything, all types of goods, whatever goods are exported from India, one policy, one scheme. And for services also, because services are picking up. Service sector growth is still there in India, and it is advancing to such levels that it is going to advance and overtake China. So with ahead of us, only China is there. In the entire world, the only two countries are growing in their service sector. One is China and the another one is India, and India is closely in tandem, closely moving with China, and at one stage India will overtake China in services. In service industry, China cannot sustain its growth levels, but whereas in India we can not only sustain, we can grow further, and that provides ample opportunities to the professionals, obviously, all the professionals. So they have this foreign trade policy has recognized this, and Service Exports from India scheme, SEIS. So merchant exports from India scheme, IS means India scheme, ME merchant exports, and service means SE, SEIS and MEIS. These two reward schemes and other things are also there. Star houses scheme. They have made very interesting areas, and other schemes are there, and exemption schemes are there, remission schemes are there, benefits to UOUs, SEZs, वगैरह, they are still there, and particularly a little base for foreign trade policy is necessary. Just I would like to spend some time on foreign trade policy. Just I would like to give you the overview of foreign trade policy. Make an entry. Already you have studied. You are going to appear for the examination. What is the foreign trade policy about? Already I have explained. This is a 5-year plan, and through which government wants to promote exports and also facilitates imports, and also matters incidental there too. Because foreign trade means international trade, and obviously it affects other areas, and even forex, balance of trade, balance of payments position, because we have service sector also, balance of payments, balance of trade position, and forex position, and investment, foreign investment in India, etc., etc. So as a whole gamut of things, foreign trade policy is going to do. And already I have told you, under Ministry of Commerce and Industry, it is going to be there, number one. And number two, there is a separate department, just like CBEC for indirect taxes, CBDT for direct taxes. There is a separate directorate, that is Directorate of Foreign Trade, DGFT, Director General Foreign Trade. It's an office of Director General Foreign Trade. It is the Directorate of this foreign trade. So DGFT office and regional authorities are also there. This Director General Foreign Trade is an authority who formulates the policy framework, and that is, of course, with the approval of the Commerce Ministry, everything will be taking place, and issues notifications also spells out the policy framework, and exports and for imports, and particularly they categorize the goods. They categorize the goods into certain classes. Say, for example, P category goods, both for imports and exports. In the foreign trade policy, volume-wise is there. For goods, say, for imported goods and export goods, just like exports, just like customs and customs tariff act, here also there are two schedules, Schedule 1 and Schedule 2 under foreign trade policy. Schedule 1 deals with imported goods and Schedule 2 goods deals with export goods. But under foreign trade policy, the list of export goods is very high, very large, because everything is exportable. Whereas under customs, it's a very narrow and restricted one. 30 plus products are now there under Schedule 2, on which export duty is imposed. So from the duty point of view, whether duty is leviable or not, taxable or not, duty point of view, Customs Tariff Act was designed. But whereas restriction is there or not, policy, whether allowed or not allowed. If restriction is there, which type of restriction is there? On that basis, the foreign trade policy, Schedule 1, Schedule 2 are there. So that is the difference. So P category goods. So P category goods means prohibited goods. So these are prohibited. You can't, suppose in Schedule 1, particular product is under P category. So you cannot import that particular product because it's prohibited. Suppose in Schedule 2, it is the export that particular product because it is under P category. P means prohibited. So what is prohibited? Prohibited by Director General Foreign Trade Office, DGFT, because entire foreign trade policy is governed by Foreign Trade Development and Regulation Act. Foreign Trade Development and Regulation Act. So the foreign trade policy is the offshoot of that particular act and is a functionary. DGFT is a functionary under that act. So he specifies, notifies, DGFT office notifies certain things, certain products under Schedule 1 or 2. So once they are under P category, they are not allowed to be imported or exported as the case may be. Similarly, you have to link this up to Section 11 of the Customs Act also. Under Section 11 of the Customs Act, on various grounds, around 20 plus grounds are there. The government, the finance ministry can issue a notification prohibiting import or export of certain goods. So whatever DGFT office has prohibited by notification has the sanction, legal sanction under Section 11, that is deemed to be prohibited goods notified under Section 11. So P category, you can't. And next category is R category, restricted category. So restricted category goods means there are certain restrictions, maybe authorization or some sort of permission or say license, because they are not using the word license nowadays. They're using the word authorization or permission. So some sort of permission or authorization is necessary, maybe for 12 months or 18 months or whatever it is. That authorization is necessary to go ahead with that if you want to export or if you want to import that particular product, if it is under R list. R list is a sort of licensed category. You need to take some sort of license, permission or authorization. And then other categories, ST category or S category, state trading enterprise. So there are certain products, certain goods you can import or export only through state trading enterprise only. Mostly these are public sector undertakings. These are of national importance. The products are of national importance, and their conservation or their monitoring is highly essential. So through proper channel, canalizing, these are also known as canalizing agents. So you have to route through, canalize through a proper channel. You can't yourself directly import or export. You have to move through, you have to take up this with the canalizing agent, that is public, that is state trading enterprise, and that concerned state trading enterprise gets you. For example, petroleum products, say Indian Oil Corporation. So through Indian Oil Corporation, you can import or export as the case may be. Similarly, State Trading Corporation, MMTC, Minerals and Metals Trading Corporation. Say for example, onion, simple example. You want to export onion. It's not that easy because nowadays there is a lot of shortage nowadays about on onions. So if you want to export onions, what is the way out? It is through NAFED, NAFED. Public sector undertakings. You can't yourself export through NAFED only. If it is not in the P list, sometimes temporarily, say recently also they have done it. Sometimes temporarily they put it under P list. So if it is in P list, you can't do anything. If it is under STE list, State Trading Enterprise, and through NAFED, you can export. So foreign trade policy divides goods into different categories. And then other category, F category. So totally free. F means free goods. So you can export or import as the case may be. If the particular product in the schedule has got a tag of F, F means free. You don't need to do anything. Go ahead straight away and export or import. So P category and R category, restricted category for license, and again STE category through canalizing agent, and then F category free. So these are the categories of goods. So once you want to export or import, you have to be very careful. You have to look into this. And again, and particularly importer or exporter, they have to get what you can say importer exporter code number through DGFT office. Of course, regional authorities are granting them. So decentralization is there. You need not go to DGFT office directly. Other branches also are providing this. without this import exporter code number, you can't move ahead. It is a 10-digit one, and it is necessary. Otherwise, even customs department will not allow. And similarly, if you are an exporter, to get the benefits of incentives, so many incentives are there. Government is encouraging exports. Naturally, every government does it. So, RCMC certificate, registration cum membership certificate, you should obtain. Where should you obtain registration cum membership certificate, RCMC? You should obtain from what you can say, the respective export promotion councils, because more than 80, more than 80 export promotion councils are there. For each product, there is for each category of product, there is a council. So they are they are monitored by the Ministry of Commerce and Industry again. So you are exporting tobacco, you are attached to tobacco board, you are exporting is there. So EPCs and boards are also together, maybe increasing. So the job of the export promotion councils is to ensure there is a smooth way of exports and quality products are exported, and they want to guide you, they want to help you ultimately to give, to pass on the benefits to the economy. So to get that, you have to get the RCMC. So you have to take care of these things. And then incentives are there. You have to look into what are the incentives I'm going to get if I do this. And there are remission schemes, duty-free import authorization, particularly the EPCG scheme. This is one of the oldest schemes, I say. Earlier, DEPP scheme was there. Duty entitlement was there. And of course, no more. That was said to be one of the oldest, lasted long. And after that, this export promotion capital goods scheme is a zero tax rate scheme with an export obligation, EO, with an export obligation. This is a vardhan, means it's a blessing. It's a great thing. It's highly beneficial. Who have export, So there are schemes, remission schemes, exemption schemes, and of course, our drawback scheme, one of the champions of schemes. No less or no inferior to, particularly after the obituary of EPB scheme, because products of EPB scheme are merged with duty drawback scheme. So you paid certain duty. You paid. You have imported certain goods and paid, and you will get them back the moment you export. Duty drawback scheme is simply that.
To allow.
So, duty drawback scheme is one of the parts of foreign trade policy. Oh, it is there under customs. So you have to look into these remission and exemption schemes and the scheme as a whole. And thirdly, there are special status holders. Special status holders. So they foreign trade policy has created special status holders. Like say for example, EOU scheme, STP, EHTP, BTP scheme, biotechnology part, electronic hardware technology part, software technology part, or EOU export oriented units, special economic zones, and star trading houses, star 1, star 2, star 3, star 4, star 5, like that, 5-star, just like star hotels. So your export potential is there, you are exporting regularly, almost regularly, and your turnover has reached certain levels. Say for example, $30,000, $30,000. That's the limit. Say for example, star number 1, and again star number 2, 3, 4, like that. So
first time examining.
Star houses. trading houses. And under foreign trade policy, particularly when you study foreign trade policy, don't think that you are studying the entire foreign trade policy. You are studying that part of foreign trade policy which is connected with your customs, excise, and service tax. Only these things. There are certain concepts like EVO, export obligation, like SION, standard input output norms, because you are importing certain input, and what is the output that you produce out of that? What is the ratio? Suppose 10 units you are introducing, 9 units you are getting. The input output ratio is 10:9. So these standards are also prescribed by the committee. DGFT. So SION, value addition, export obligation, there are certain technical terms which you have to take care of. Except that you don't have to worry about foreign trade policy. See, it's hardly for 10 marks. And of course, it matters a lot. Out of 100, 10 marks means matters a lot. So don't treat foreign trade policy as something foreign to you. Treat it as a part of your this thing, and you'll be able to understand clearly. Only thing is, there are certain technical terms. Initially, you find it difficult, and gradually, you get into that. If you are not able to get to the meaning of a particular term, you go for Google search, or go for some dictionary, something like that. You try to find the meaning and then go ahead. So I don't think it should pose any difficulty to you. And as far as customs is concerned, it's a very important thing to understand. From examination point of view, valuation chapter is the most important chapter. And in valuation, practical questions. In valuation, there are varieties of practical questions. I need not give a list. How to find out value, how to calculate or compute duties, duty computation, and assessable value or customs value finding out. And of course, you should know the value of export goods also. There can be tax on exports also. Okay, this chapter is a very important area, but in customs, basic concepts are always important. Without that, you can't move ahead. And from other conceptual point of view, procedures, say customs procedures, import procedures and export procedures. Nowadays, everything is e-filing. So import manifest, the carrier in charges of filing means e-filing. You are filing bill of entry for imports, shipping bill for exports, e-filing. Export manifest, e-filing. Everything nowadays e-filing. Self-assessment has come into picture. So earlier, first appraisement, second appraisement system was there. Now you have to assess on your own, self-assessment. One is through internet, and another one is self. So you have to take care of. You have to be very careful about these things. These matters you have to be very careful about. In customs, there is nothing special. Basic concepts you have to go along with. Of course, very important valuation chapter, theory, practicals, everything is important. And next to that, procedural aspects, theory aspect, very important. And then miscellaneous topics are there. Out of these miscellaneous topics, one duty drawback, section 74-75. And then a little bit practical problems area in baggage. These things you please take care of. The rest is okay. In customs, there are hardly any amendments also. And I come to service tax. Service tax, the more I tell you, the less it would be, because we have almost 50% weightage for service tax. And what is there in service tax? Maybe out of academic interest, you may ask what is there in service tax, what to do. Already you have done a lot with IPC also. At IPCC level you did, and a little bit more improvement. For example, negative list. And you have to be a little more thorough with the negative list and mega exemption, and you have to be more and more thorough. No little thing. So it's not a small thing. It's not a small thing. Mega exemption, you have to be very, very thorough, and a negative list you have to be very, very thorough for the simple reason you will get practical questions based on them. And do the entire practice manual, complete the entire practice manual. Don't leave anything from the practice manual. I know if you ask me the secret, what is the secret of passing CA examination, whether it is final or whatever it is, you don't have to worry. You read or don't read institute's study module, nothing to worry. If you can read, you read, because it is voluminous. If you can't read, you can read any other material or any teacher's notes. Nowadays, it's available, everything is available, or some textbook of your choice, because you find it voluminous. Institute's material is voluminous. But what you have to do is, after reading any content or any material of any author, go with the practice manual. That's it. Go with the practice manual. Do practice manual 2-3 times. You do practice each and every question. You should not leave any question. That is a trade secret. And the revision paper is there. Practice tests are there. So with practice test and revision paper, RTP, of course, and the practice manual, what is left? You are very fortunate. Let me tell you, this is at all India level. Maybe I'm saying, I should say or I should not say, I don't know. You are very fortunate to have such a professional body which is very much concerned about giving you the input. It is probably the pioneering institute which gives a lot of content, a lot of information, a lot of input to the students for the preparation of their examination. What else is there? You can't compare this institute with anything else. Not more, I want to say. You understand? So whatever is there available on the website, you see, a lot of effort is there. Latest cases. They give latest cases. The institute publishes latest cases and updation, latest amendments and latest cases. Practice manual is there. Revision test papers are there. Practice test papers or model papers are there. What else is required? Your job is done. It's not a difficulty. There is no difficulty. But the only thing is, I suggest, even institute wants, go beyond, develop and improve knowledge. And of course, when you are working with a firm, naturally you are gaining practical knowledge also. You have gained a lot of practical knowledge. It's no less. But examination point of view, these things will do a lot. So I have already said it. Whatever institute has published, that is more than sufficient. But the only thing is study module. If you want to skip, you skip that study module, and alternatively you read some other material which is thin, not bulky. That's it. And then in service tax, there are very important areas. One is negative list, another one mega exemption list, of course, read with abatement list. If you are thorough with these three areas, you are 50%, 40% done at least. And the rest is the definition of service, declared services. Particularly remember, you should be very, very thorough with the declared services. Conceptually, they are very good. Because, you know, declared service is something concept based. So obviously, examiner will be more interested in putting a question in declared services, and particularly in areas like works contract, you will be getting practical questions also. Those practical questions you have to solve. You have to be in a position to solve. And next important area is valuation. Valuation you study at IPCC level also, that what is extra is not very much extra, of course. The adjustment areas specified in Rule 5 and Rule 6, particularly under valuation rules and practical questions. So valuation chapter, practical questions connected with negative list and mega exemption list and abatement one. This is the base. This is the base for your practical area. And other exemptions like small service providers and rules, important rules. Out of the important rules, POPs are read with section 66F interpretation, and export of services rule 6A, and POTR, point of taxation rules. These are routine. You have to be there. And in service tax rules, there is not much to worry because it's a routine thing. You'll be able to do. And the only thing is your provisions under Finance Act. Finance Act 1994, that is dealing with service tax. So recovery, refund, adjudication, penalties, etc. But in particular, in service tax, the penal provisions are very, very important. Say section 75, 76, 77. These provisions, penal provisions are equally important, very, very important. You cannot afford to miss them. So Finance Act portion you have to study, because at IPC level, you haven't gone through. It was not necessary. Now here at final level, it is necessary. That is the difference. That is the difference. And you have to respect it. You have to study. And a little bit case study also. In service tax, you can expect a number of cases, but not many cases are there under service tax, you know. Nowadays, Supreme Court is not very much preoccupied with the cases of service tax. Very few cases are there. And of course, cases decided by high courts, now they are equally important, whether it is excise, customs or service tax. And tribunal level cases, they are only for knowledge, but from the examination point of view, very rarely they will ask a decision given by a tribunal, because there are so many cases. Even for a student, it is very difficult. So, cases decided by High Court, cases decided by Supreme Court, you have to be thorough. And you can never afford to miss case study, whether it is service tax, excise, customs or whatsoever. And this is the thing. If you have any queries, you are welcome to put queries regarding the subject, examination. And last but not least, I tell you, already you are experienced, I need not tell you, but still, as a teacher, as a faculty, I feel like, because I was also involved in, for some time, the activities connected with your these things. I don't want to say more on that. Without experience, I would like to say, your 3 hours decides your fate. Maybe you have a lot of knowledge that you are not able to manage time, that will go waste. If you are not able to solve a particular question, particularly practical question, if you are not able to solve it, if you are not able to get into that, better leave it. Don't waste time. Don't keep doing, because time management is time management. You have to manage time by all means, and there is no way out. Okay? So to manage time, what you have to do is plan your preparation and also plan in the examination. The planning for preparation, you do it leisurely because you have plenty of time. But 3 hours, in 3 hours time, you have to plan there on the spot planning. That is ultimately going to decide your result. So make sure that 3 hours you are spending carefully with a plan, not in a haphazard manner. But at final level, I know you are more mature than anybody else. You can do it. You will do it. And so finally, lastly, let me wish you all the best for your examination. Let us look forward to positive aspects ahead, and let me also wish you a bright career ahead. And for all queries, you are most welcome to put, and we are happy to guide you. We are happy to solve your queries, clear your doubts. Okay, so thank you very much. Once again, I'll be looking forward to good results. Okay, bye.